Hi, I'm Katie Fagan, the Director of Training here at Call Dad, and today I'm going to be walking you through how to connect your refrigerant gauges in cooling mode and also how to read analog gauges. So, to begin, first things first, you always want to make sure that the connections on your manifold are tight and secure. So you're going to check each side and make sure all your hoses are secure. And then once you feel confident in those connections, you're going to remove your red hose first. Okay? Your red hose is for the high side of your equipment, so that's going to be connecting to read the outdoor unit saturation temperatures and pressures. And we connect this to our liquid line port. So the liquid line is going to be the smaller of our two line sets. And so off to the side here, you'll notice I'm going to take the cap off. And pro tip, instead of setting these down on the ground or on the system and having them roll off, get lost, get dirty, always go ahead and place them back on your manifold where you just removed that hose. You can take this cap and you can place it on the back here, and that keeps from losing it, getting dirt and dust inside, and it'll keep it nice and secure here. Plus, it reminds you to put them back on once you are done with your gauges on the system. Next, you'll notice that the connection port here for your hoses is movable. It slides along this. And on the inside here, you'll notice a rubber gasket, and then this depressor, this metal piece, is going to be what actually pushes in your Schrader core, kind of like a tire on your car, to allow the refrigerant out. We don't want to do that though until this is secure on there. We want to let as little refrigerant out as possible while our hands are there. So you want to make sure that you have pulled this out, extended it as far away from your gasket and depressor here while you're attaching your hoses. Next, you're going to start by threading it on just so that it secures. Make sure it's lined up correctly. And then once you've gotten a few threads on, again, I have not depressed anything, no refrigerant is out, but I'm going to make sure that I reposition my hands so that I can thread this on as quickly as possible. Okay? So I take my two index fingers, keeping my hands out of the way of the front and the back because that's where refrigerant will come out, and I'm going to tighten down until it does not get any tighter. And you might have heard that little hiss. That was the refrigerant escaping. But as long as you've got that good rubber seal in there, that gasket is nice and secure, and the depression portion of your connector is not sticking out too far, you shouldn't lose too much refrigerant at that point. Next, we're going to repeat the same process with our low side of our gauge manifold. Again, we're going to remove the side of our hose that we're going to connect. We are going to attach it to the port for our suction line, or some people call it a vapor line. It's the larger of the two. And we're going to secure the cap again to the back of our gauges so that we do not lose it during this process. Same thing, I've extended that connection. I've threaded on a few times, a few twists, but nothing where refrigerant's coming out. I make sure it's secure. I'm gonna use my fingers and tighten it all the way down. Now, you may notice that that side did not let out a hiss. That is because, again, this is our low pressure side, so it's generally much easier to attach our gauges at this point. Okay? So that's the first step. That's connecting our hoses in AC mode. You may have also noticed there is a third port here. On heat pumps that can run in heat mode, we do have a third port called the true suction port, and we would hook up if we are checking it in heat mode. However, this time we're just working in AC. So next thing I want to show you is how to read your analog gauges. We hooked up our blue side to the suction or vapor line. That is the low side of our system, and it's actually reading the pressures of our indoor evaporator coil. So this is reading what's happening inside the house, okay? Our red side is the high pressure, this is outside. And remember, we want the pressure differences because that creates temperature differences. And so that's how we transfer our heat, okay? When you are reading these gauges, you'll notice there's a large font for the numbers around the exterior. That is your PSIG, so your gauge pressure. PSIG does not take into account atmospheric pressure, so it should be reading at 0 when your hoses are not attached. However, if we look right now, I'm a little bit above 100, maybe 105 there on my low side, and I'm about 250 on my high side. So you do want that pressure difference between the two. But a lot of technicians just look at the pressures, whereas we want to focus primarily on the saturation temperatures that those correspond with. Now, the pressures are going to be a different saturation temperature depending on what type of refrigerant your system is running with. This system happens to be a 410A system. Okay. And so if I'm looking at my analog gauges, whether you have an older set or a newer set, typically the 410 is going to correspond with this rose-colored ring. On my gauges, it's the middle one here. On your gauges, it may be somewhere different. And then your other colors are going to correspond with a different refrigerant type. So do make sure that you are looking at the correct refrigerant. So right now, if I let it run, we're still creeping up a little bit, but my low side saturation temperature is right about 35 degrees, okay? And my high side saturation temperature is right about 84. And again, I don't have to use a pressure temperature conversion chart because I have that right here on my gauges to read. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time.